Yeah, we really are because, we spend roughly 12 to 16 years in school. We learn how to dissect a frog, we memorize historical dates, but
But we completely skip over financial literacy.
exactly, we're taught to be employees. We're never taught how to actually build wealth. And that's what we're unpacking today, broken down into 8 key lessons from the source material.
Right, and it all starts with lesson one, the tale of two mindsets. The author learned about money by observing two completely different father figures.
Yeah, his biological dad, who he calls his poor dad, was highly educated. I mean, we're talking a PhD, studied at Stanford, University of
A
Chicago,
brilliant guy, super hardworking, followed all the rules, but uh, constantly struggled financially.
which is so relatable, right? We all know someone like that. Brilliant, but always stressed about a sudden, like, $500 car repair. But then there's his best friend's dad, the rich dad.
Yeah, an eighth grade dropout,
Mm.
no impressive academic pedigree at all, but he eventually became one of the wealthiest men in Hawaii.
And the contrast in how they talked about money is wild. The poor dad would always say, the love of money is the root of all evil.
While the rich dad said, the lack of money is the root of all evil.
But the part that really stuck with me was their internal monologues when they wanted something expensive. The poor dad would just sigh and say, I can't afford it.
Right, end of story. Statement made.
Exactly. It's like dropping a mental barbell. You just let the weight hit the floor and your brain shuts down. But the rich dad actually forbade those words. He forced himself to ask, how can I afford it?
Which forces your brain to do reps, right? You're hunting for a solution. It's the fundamental difference between passive and active financial programming. Have you ever noticed this in your own life? Like how quickly we just accept our financial limits instead of questioning them?
Oh, totally. I've done it a million times.
So the actionable takeaway for lesson one is simple. Next time you want something out of your budget, ban the phrase, I can't afford it. Force yourself to ask, how can I afford it? And see what your brain comes up with.
I love that. Okay, moving into lesson 2, escaping the rat race. If this active programming is so great, why do so many smart people stay stuck on the passive path?
Well, it comes down to a brutal lesson the rich dad taught the author when he was just 9 years old.
Oh, the convenience store story. The kid asks to learn how to make money, so the rich dad makes him dust-canned goods for, what, 10 cents an hour?
Yeah, which was practically nothing, even back then. So the kid gives up his Saturdays, misses his baseball games, and eventually he's just furious. He marches in to demand a raise, or he threatens to quit.
Which was exactly what the rich dad wanted, right?
Exactly. He wanted the boy to feel that anger. He uses it to teach him that most people spend their best years angry at their boss for bad pay, rather than learning how money actually works.
But, I mean, why put the kid through all that? Why not just draw it on a whiteboard?
Because money is deeply emotional. The rich dad needed him to physically feel the frustration of trading time for pennies, because that frustration is the entry point to what he calls the rat race. Get up, go to work, pay bills, repeat.
And it's driven by 2 primal emotions, right? Fear and greed.
Yes. First, the fear of not paying your bills terrifies you into going to work.
You wake up in a cold sweat about rent, and you rush out the door.
Right. And then you get the paycheck, and greed or desire takes over. You want a bigger TV, a vacation, so you spend it all.
And the second the money is gone, the fear comes right back. It's a perfect loop. He compares it to a donkey chasing a carrot on a stick.
And here's the crazy part. Even rich people get caught in this trap. They amass millions, not out of financial intelligence, but out of a neurotic fear of being poor. They just buy a more expensive treadmill.
There's still the donkey. The carrot is just made of gold.
Exactly. So the actionable takeaway for lesson 2 is to pause before your next big purchase. Recognize whether fear or greed is driving your spending and step back from the emotion.
Okay, but what you're about to discover changes everything because getting past the emotion is only half the battle. Lesson 3 is the golden rule. Assets versus liabilities. Where do we actually put our money?
Right. The rich dad believed in the KISS principle. Keep it super simple. You just need to understand cash flow. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. That's it.
Wait, no complicated accounting definitions?
Nope. So for a middle-class person, $1 comes in as salary and immediately flows to the liability column. A car loan, credit card debt, a mortgage.
It leaves their pocket.
Right. But for the wealthy, that dollar goes into the asset column, dividend stocks, rental real estate. It goes to work and generates a new dollar.
This brings up the middle class trap. Buying liabilities that you mistakenly think are assets. And this is where the author gets super controversial.
Oh, yeah. The poor dad said, Our home is our greatest asset. The rich dad said, a house is a liability.
I really have to push back on behalf of the listener here because, wait, is he seriously saying you should never buy a house? That goes against the whole American dream.
No, he's not saying sleep in a tent. Think about this for a moment. It's about sequence and opportunity cost. When you sink all your cash into a massive house, your money is trapped. It's draining cash through taxes and maintenance.
So it's not putting money in my pocket every month.
Exactly. The wealthy build their asset column first. The cash flow from those true assets eventually pays for the big luxury house.
Oh, wow. The asset buys the luxury. You don't buy the luxury first with your own sweat and credit.
Right. So the actionable takeaway for lesson 3 is to sit down and map out your actual cash flow. Look at what you own and ask, is this putting money in my pocket or taking it out?
That is a total paradigm shift. And honestly, if you'd like to explore this book in greater depth, consider reading the original version. You'll find the purchase link in the YouTube products section.
Highly recommend it. So moving into lesson 4, mind your own business. Because your 9-to-5 job doesn't magically build that asset column for you.
Yeah, the author makes a clear distinction. Your day job is not your business. Your day job is you working for someone else's business.
Your actual business is your asset column. You keep your day job to pay the bills, but you obsessively build your assets on the side.
You treat every dollar like an employee working 24 hours a day.
Exactly, which gives us the actionable takeaway for lesson 4. Dedicate at least a few hours every single week to building your own asset column, not just working for your employer.
Which leads right into lesson 5, because once you start building that column, you have to protect it. And this gets into the power of corporations as a legal shield.
And we should point out here that the author has a very specific capitalist philosophy on this. We're just impartially sharing his perspective, not taking sides. But he argues that the Robin Hood idea, taxing the rich to give to the poor, is flawed because it ultimately just punishes the middle class.
Because the truly wealthy just figure out legal ways around it. Right?
Yes. And their main shield is the corporation. Now, don't think of giant glass skyscrapers.
Yeah, I love the analogy here. A modern corporation is literally just a file folder of legal documents sitting in an attorney's office. It's like putting on a hazmat suit to walk into a highly radioactive tax environment.
That is a perfect way to put it. An employee earns money, gets taxed immediately, and tries to live on what's left. The text literally calls an employee, without a corporation, a docile cow ready for milking.
Ouch.
Yeah. But a corporation flips it. It earns money, spends everything it legally can pre-tax, and only pays taxes on what's left over.
It's a massive legal advantage. So the takeaway for lesson 5 is to actually look into the legal structures and tax advantages available to you rather than just accepting default tax hits.
Exactly. Which brings us to lesson 6. Work to learn, don't work for money.
This one is so counterintuitive.
It is. The author purposefully joined the Marines to learn leadership. He joined Xerox to learn sales, even though he was terrified of rejection.
He prioritized education over job security. Meanwhile, his highly educated poor dad valued job security above absolutely everything else.
The uneducated rich dad understood that real-world skills are way more valuable than a steady paycheck from a system you don't control. So the takeaway for lesson 6. Consider taking on a side gig or a new role specifically to learn a high-value skill, like sales or marketing, rather than just for the hourly pay.
Okay, so if the blueprint is this clear, manage emotions, buy assets, protect them, and constantly learn what stops people, that's lesson 7, overcoming the cynic.
The internal obstacles are huge. Doubt and cynicism kill dreams. When an opportunity pops up, the cynic says, it's too risky. What if I lose my money?
Right, it's just letting yourself off the hook from even doing the math.
Yes, but the fear of losing money is real. To overcome it, you need actual financial intelligence, which he breaks down into 4 pillars.
Okay, let's unpack those. How do they work together?
Think of it like a high-performance car. Pillar 1 is accounting. That's your dashboard. It's the ability to read numbers and understand cash flow.
Got it. Dashboard.
Pillar 2 is investing. That's the engine. The actual strategies of making money make money.
But an engine is useless if you don't know where to steer.
Exactly, which is pillar 3. Understanding markets, supply and demand. Where's the road opening up? And finally, pillar 4 is the law. That's your insurance policy, the corporate structures we just talked about.
You really need all 4. So the takeaway for lesson 7 is to identify which of those 4 pillars you are weakest in and dedicate time to studying it.
And that ties perfectly into our final lesson, lesson 8. To actually fuel this car, you have to prioritize your paycheck differently. The author borrows a rule from the richest man in Babylon. Pay yourself first.
This is a huge psychological shift because normally you pay the landlord, the bank, the government, and then if there's anything left, you save it.
Which means you save nothing. Paying yourself first means you deliberately channel money into your asset column before you pay a single monthly expense.
Wait, won't the bill collectors come after you?
That's the secret genius of it. Ask yourself honestly, how hard would you hustle if you had to come up with rent money in 2 days? By paying your asset column first, you artificially create pressure. You use the fear of those bill collectors to force yourself to get creative and generate more income.
Wow. You use the emotion of fear to your advantage instead of letting your asset column starve.
Hmm.
And the very first asset you should pay into is your own mind, right?
Absolutely. 90% of people buy giant TVs, but only 10% buy business books. Your mind is your most powerful tool. So the takeaway for lesson 8 is to literally set up an automatic transfer to your investment account the day you get paid, before you pay anyone else.
Man, what a deep dive. And listen, if you'd like to explore this book in greater depth, consider reading the original version. You'll find the purchase link in the YouTube products section.
It really is a complete paradigm shift. The masses follow a passive script, but true wealth is actively created. You choose whether you'll be rich, poor, or middle class with every dollar that enters your hand.
So true. But before we wrap up, you mentioned a final provocative thought from the text that challenges everything we've just talked about.
Yeah, I did. The rich dad's final mind-bending assertion is that money is not real.
Wait, what?
He says it is merely an agreement, a psychological illusion holding the world together. It is literally just the carrot dangling in front of the donkey.
Oh, wow.
And if money is truly just a made-up concept, it raises a huge question. What invisible carrots are you currently chasing in your own life? And how would your reality change tomorrow if you stopped working for the illusion and started inventing your own financial rules?
That is something to seriously think about. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Be sure to tell us in the comments which book you'd like us to summarize next. Book Bonnie, where every book speaks.